You have to take training that we call our CDCs. It's career development courses, where in those series is an 8 set of books that you have to go through and take tests on to reach these different levels where you're able to do more things. And also in conjunction with on-the-job training. I remember working with a couple doctors, if people weren't really taking care of their teeth, they say, this is damage to government property, you could get in trouble, Just imagine if we say that to our civilian patients, The core values of the Air Force was integrity first, service before self, excellence in all you do. And those are still those ethos still keep me going, and the things that I do every day, I rely on them and I believe in them and they're etched in me.
Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 313. Everyone, this is your student roundtable for the month. And by the way, Happy New Year. We're so excited that you guys are here for another year of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcasting. Thank you so much for sticking with us for this long. In this episode, it was actually very, very fascinating. We talked about what it's like to be a hygienist in the military and what that educational component looks like, and whether or not it's a better idea to go into the military first and become a hygienist second, or should you go ahead and be a hygienist first and then go in the military? Very, very fascinating questions. We really appreciate our guest. So sit back, relax, and here is your student roundtable. Before we get to the interview, we want to say a big thank you to Paradise Dental Technologies, or PDT, for supporting the continuing education portion of this podcast for so many years. If you do not know already, many of our full-length episodes count for CE. You'll find the links in the show notes, or you can sign up for our newsletter by going to ataleoftwohygienists.com. When you sign up for the newsletter, we will periodically send out links to shows that have expiring CE courses attached. And none of this could be possible without the support of the amazing people over at PDT. So check out their hygiene and other instruments at pdtdental.com. That's pdtdental.com. Now, on to the interview.
Well, we have a fun student roundtable, but it's not a full roundtable today. It's a fake roundtable, I think. But hopefully I can throw in some thoughts and feelings, because in this episode, we are talking about being a dental hygienist in the military versus private or public health, private practice, non-military environments. And today we have Tiffany Grant on our podcast. Welcome, Tiffany, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I can't believe this is your first time.
I just feel like I always wanted to say thank you for having me, guys. So that's pretty exciting.
That's so funny. I do think it's great because I see so many people on Facebook, or I interact with you in person at conferences, and I just assume that you've been on the podcast, but we're glad to have you here. So awesome. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you're practicing, and what your journey has been.
Yeah, sure. I have been in dentistry since 2003. My aunt, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I'm really a military brat. Both of my parents were military, but I consider home St. Louis. And once I graduated high school, I started to work in a private practice dental clinic as a dental assistant where my aunt worked for over 30 years. And at that time, I decided to enlist into the Air Force, and I joined. Initially, when I joined, I was just trying to get out of St. Louis. So I picked the first thing they had, which was Loadmaster, where you load things into an airplane, and I could not pop my ears during a physical. So they were like, oh, we have dental assisting. So I was like, sure, I'll do that. So that's how I kind of got into the dental field in the Air Force. When I started my tech school for dental assisting, they let you know about a new program that they had for to become a hygienist. A lot of times, I think when people think of military hygienists, they think of dental assistants that scale teeth, probably. And that was the case for a while. But they were saying that they started up a program where they sent 10 Air Force dental assistants to 2 different hygiene programs. And that was in 2004. And I was like, I think I want to do that. So you had to kind of do all your prerequisites and apply for the program. It was a very competitive program. And I got in 2008 and started school in St. Petersburg in 2009, sorry. What else can I say? I got out in 2013. I started off at public health because that feels like a very natural transition from military dentistry into public health. I did like a mobile school program for a year or so, and then I went into FQHC. My time during FQHC is where I found my real like passion work. And I want to say too, I don't know, but I found it hard when I got into the Air Force to transition into private practice. So public health just seemed like a very natural fit for me. And then I got really involved with like teledentistry and telehealth with the FQHC that I work with and that dental director. And I followed that dental director to private practice. So right now I'm working in private practice. I co-founded a teledentistry consulting group with my current boss, former dental director. And that's what I do pretty much. I work part-time in private practice, and I do teledentistry consulting. So
yeah. I love to hear that. Andrew, you had a question real fast?
First of all, fascinating journey. That is a lot to pack in just, this 3 minutes, I think, is all it took you to tell all that story, man. But this is not either here or there, but tell me about the popping the ears thing. I missed what you were saying about that. Like, so you couldn't pop your ears?
Yeah. So when I was in basic training, it was considered like a flight job. So you had to pass a flight physical since you'd be on an airplane for a considerable amount of time. And basically you have to put both your hands over your ears, and you have to be able to pop your ears. And it's called a Valsalva, and I could not do it to save my life. They sent me to all these ENTs, and then they were like, yeah, you're just going to have to pick a different job. And now I realize the older I get, I do struggle with being on airplanes for a long, I get a lot of sinus infections and stuff like that. And, so I felt miserably popping my ears. So lots of
lucky us for me.
In the industry.
Yeah, seriously. Now you said that that you had applied, but it took a couple of years for you to get into that exclusive program. Is that what I was following?
So it just took me a while to actually get my prerequisites. I had not went to college before I went into I'm pretty much like 1 year out of high school when I joined the Air Force. So you're doing all your prereqs for hygiene school part-time. Obviously, being a military member is your full-time job. So during your off time, you take the time to do college and work on those kind of things. So
those prereqs are the same exact ones that Trident would be requiring of everyone else, right? And
yes.
St. Petersburg as well.
In St. Petersburg, yes.
Cool. Very cool. Sorry, I'm caught up now.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about what you were doing as a dental assistant. Were you doing the scaling that you mentioned?
So my first base was Ellsworth, South Dakota. I consider myself from St. Louis. So, and I spent all my money, and all I had enough money for was a bus ticket to go from St. Louis to South Dakota. And I cried the whole time. It was just like the most desolate ride to what you may think was going to be hell, but it was like one of the best places I've ever been. I just couldn't see it as an 18-year-old kid, but so my first thing that I did was just general dental assisting. Basically, before you can clean teeth, you have to kind of meet you have different levels of dental assisting that you can do. It goes from all the way 3 level, 5 level, 7 level, 9 level. And you take kind of like, it's almost like you have to take training that we call our CDCs. It's career development courses, where in those series is an 8 set of books that you have to go through and take tests on to reach these different levels where you're able to do more things, and also in conjunction with on the job training. So like a supervisor would have to sign you off on task, and in order to clean teeth you had to be a 5 level, and you had to go through a profi course, or they called them OPAs, oral preventative assistance. So you had to go through the OPA course in order to clean teeth. So that didn't really occur to me until I got to my second base, which was Okinawa, and I got to my 5 level to be able to do those and had certain amount of tasks signed off and stuff. So yeah, but I was able to do a lot. I did general assisting when I first got to South Dakota. When I went to Okinawa, luckily, when you're in the United States, you have specialists that are off base. If you don't have them on base, those clinics are relatively small. So if you didn't have a periodontist on base, you can go see it off base. But when I moved to Okinawa, they keep all the specialists you may need within the clinic, just because the nature of us being overseas and foreign dentistry standards may be different. So I got to work all different type of specialties. I started off in ortho, then I went to pediatrics, then I went to oral surgeon. Then I started to clean teeth. After that, I became an OPA. So
wow.
Did you find that the training protocol, like leveling up for every step, was adequate? And then when you went to hygiene school, you're like, oh, I wish I would have learned that back then? Or was it pretty good?
No, it's like a 2-week training, but they use PSR scores to determine pretty much what patient you can see. So if the PSRs are between 0 to 2, then an OPA can see them. And you weren't supposed to do any subgingival scaling, but it's like, that's impossible. Like, it's very impossible. Are you going to, that's probably, if you've ever seen like a military patient, as a hygienist, you probably see a lot of Burnish calculus,
Yes,
and that's
ma'am.
why, because they're like cracking it off on the top and smoothing it all up for you, because they can't go very deeply. But so honestly, I feel like military students that go to hygiene school, they're very comfortable being in the mouth. But my experience was like, oh my God, I felt like I was in the Matrix. I was like, I took the pill, I'm seeing things, I feel woke, all that, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like a whole different world of things. So no, I would say it was not adequate, but I'm thankful because I was a very confident student when I went to school. I felt pretty prepared. Just because the amount of dental experience that I did have, and I felt very comfortable in the mouth. I felt pretty comfortable with dental instruments, even though I'm sure I gave a couple people some gingivectomies.
Didn't we all?
But yes,
Seriously.
but I wasn't afraid to pick up the scaler. Like, unlike
Nice.
some of my civilian counterparts, they were like, the instrument is like shaking in their hand, and I don't think we experienced that, So.
Was there a thought when you were working with all those specialists that maybe you were going to do hygiene and then specialty, or you knew right away like hygiene was for you?
So when I worked in ortho, I really realized that I was a person who really valued autonomy. I did not I was the dental assistant that would like fall asleep at endo. They would like just kick me out of there because I just really struggled with just passing an instrument. So I felt when I did become an OPA, I really did enjoy that autonomy that I had as a provider. So I knew that's really what I wanted to do. I first recognized that when I went into ortho, because they give you a lot of, they said, do this and you just go at it and you just do it. You don't have someone kind of supervising your every move, or you actually assisting, you're doing the work. So I realized that I'm just that kind of person who appreciates that type of autonomy. And when I got into as an OPA, I was like, I like this, I want to do this. Plus I did a little research on the paycheck. So, that was good,
Yeah,
That does help.
100%.
Why do I always want to like throw a plate down when I hear you say OPA?
Yes.
Is that a Greek thing?
It's a Greek thing.
Throw in the OPA.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm really curious why you felt like when you graduated that public health was easier for you coming from the military than private practice.
So I think that a lot of our practice in the military is based on community health. We do a lot of matrix tracking on cavity. So the military bases are like small communities of people that we're often categorized by the type of job we do. And all across the base, the security forces are there, the maintainers who work on the airplanes are there, and then all the medical people. And we would actually track matrix on patients based on, where they worked. If you were a cop, we would pull all the cops and look how many cavities they had. We had a lot of, we were called the Prev Dent section, preventative dentistry section. So we were like in charge of monitoring a lot of prevention metrics as part of our job, especially the hygienists. When you become a hygienist, you have a dentist that's over those programs. But as they started to train hygienists, they gave hygienists that where we were manage the OPAs and we will manage to make these different matrices. Like we would look at fluoridation because the military will fluoridate their own water, and we will work with, bio to make sure that it was the correct levels of fluoridation in the water.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to do so many briefings, on caries risks. We would have to do schools. That was part of our jobs to do that. It's just, we did a mouth guard program. That was all part. It was not like an optional thing. This was all part of that program and tasks that had to be carried out. So I applied for a lot of private practice jobs when I got out. I just felt like it wasn't, I don't know. And I think too, when I came out of hygiene school, I felt like I can make a change. And I know that sounds really cliche. I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm going to do something big. I don't know. I just felt that way. And I remember when I went to my first space and I wanted to apply a lot of the things that I learned in my education, but they were like, oh, Sergeant Grant, don't reinvent the wheel. These programs are working fine. They weren't really used to having hygienists as well. Let me tell you that. There's not many of us. And they were putting us in new places that never had hygienists before. And of course, because it's been run by an OPA or different things like that, we were trying to apply a lot of the things like we learned at community health. And we were trying to apply these things, and they weren't really used to that either. And when you have that kind of rank dynamic, it's very different. It's similar to being in a practice with a dentist, but it's a dentist with a rank involved. So it's a very different dynamic. It's kind of like, well, you just shut up and color, but you can't quit, you just gotta hang in there, not all dentists. I don't want to make a generalized statement, but I definitely had my struggles because I did take that pill that I mentioned before and I felt enlightened and I felt strong and I felt like, well, we probably shouldn't be doing this and maybe we should do that. And they were like, you just chill out. So yeah, that happened. Yeah. But yeah, it just, because we were doing a lot of preventive programs, it felt natural to kind of go into that space once I got out.
It's encouraging to hear that there's so many programs that, for trying, we don't do that, right? In private practice, at least we don't do that. I'm wondering though, did you see or did you notice any different types of drivers for disease, whether it's caries or perio, in the military versus private practice or public health when you got out?
I think what's interesting about the military population is they're generally healthy. You don't see a lot of systemic diseases, but that was cool because if you had a patient base of perio patients that you kind of tracked in a perio database, you can figure out which ones were diabetics and very easily just say you need an extra cleaning, and they would have to come in and do extra cleaning just because they're in the military, they had to do it.
Yeah.
I always thought that was pretty cool. I remember working with a couple doctors, if people weren't really taking care of their teeth, they say, this is damage to government property, you can get in trouble, Just imagine if we could say that to our civilian patients, like how easy that would make our job, but I would say that the population was relatively healthy. And I think sometimes they took some services for granted because they had such easy access to it, where when you're in public health, you see just a lack of access and it's heartbreaking. You see a lot of pain, you see a lot of more complex issues versus where some of the issues in the military were more dietary and genetic versus, a whole different gambit of things that I saw in public health. So I would say that was a big difference.
When you got out and you were having to use EagleSoft and Dentrix and all these other these softwares, were you a little bit let down?
So Dentrix, the military, and I don't know what they do now, but they did have a form of Dentrix. But we use, and we did that mainly when I was getting out, they were using that for patient scheduling and for notes, but we weren't actually charting in the records. We were still using a paper record at the time. So yeah, it was different for sure. I would say that I was like, wow, we don't have a record that we have to pull and put the stuff in. And it's just because military, they really wait a long time before they implement like new technology changes and stuff. It has to be very proven, tried and true before they do, because they would have to make it uniform throughout everywhere and they would have to make sure it works. So yeah, they're pretty slow about changing things. So
well, how did they do like your instruments or the doctor's handpiece or I would assume it's the same thing. It's the same across the board. Yeah. You don't really get a chance to say, hey, I would rather use this other brand.
So you could, especially a lot of the dentists that were coming out of dental school, they were pretty used to, unlike, dental assistants and we're trained within the military. The dentists are obviously trained in their programs and they're like, no, I want this, and they just depend on really who was the commander of the dentist, which is a dentist, but the commander of the dental office, and budgets and all that kind of things. They seem to get their stuff more easily. It's kind of interesting how hygienists got their stuff. I know when I got there, I had all the instruments changed out. I'm like, these things must be like 25 years old. I don't know, So I updated all the kits and that was some of the thing. Like I came in there like, these instruments have to go. We have to use this kind of pace, I need something. I need a rest in. I need what do we have here? I need stuff, and they were like, whoa, because I think it's okay for an officer or a dentist to say that. But coming from someone who's enlisted, I don't think they were used to having that type of opinion from someone like that. So, yeah.
Oh, I love it though.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I can definitely say, because I graduated with 2 Air Force students that I had gone through the program. They were so good. They were such great students. And then I taught Air Force students, because I worked at one of those schools that took up to four a year. I think sometimes we only had two, but we would take up to four. And they were some of the best students. Like even if I had walked into that program and nobody had told me who the Air Force students were, I could have figured it out.
Yeah.
Because they were so, like you mentioned, confident and comfortable. They were regimented. So they were fine with following a syllabus. They were fine with following the recommended checklist and the protocols. Their infection control was a lot better.
Yeah. I mean,
some
plus,
others.
Like if you don't pass, you have to answer to Uncle Sam, like no one wants to do that.
That is a point I did not think about.
That's quite the threat.
Yeah.
I tell you the truth. Like I had done very well in my hygiene program. It's not to actually, I don't know. I had set a record, but I got pregnant twice in hygiene school, the first year and the second year.
Oh my God.
And I don't know. Like I was even like
that is a record
to tell people that I was pregnant the second time, like I just was. But like it was like one of our last classes, like professionalism or something, and like the last semester, and I had forgot to take a test or something, probably lack of sleep, I'm assuming, but I almost failed out of hygiene school because I didn't, because I was about to fail this course. I don't even think I took pictures, like class pictures with my classmates, because I thought but the immense amount of pressure that I had, it was like it never even happened. No one's ever even failed out because first of all, I had to tell like someone that I failed this course. I'm in jeopardy of failing. Like they didn't even know. They're calling like higher ups from headquarters in Texas. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant with the second one. I'm just like, I gotta pass this class. So I mean, I think that definitely kept you in line. I would say just that fear of that. But I passed. I made it through.
So would you recommend that someone does your route, or would you maybe equally or less recommend someone go to hygiene school, pass, and then enlist?
So from my understanding, and I do still believe it's true, you cannot join the Air Force as a hygienist. You have to become a dental assistant. You can become a hygienist as a civilian, but you cannot enlist as a hygienist. You can enlist into the Public Health Service Corps as a hygienist, which is the route that a lot of hygienists who went through a Navy or Air Force program, when they get out, they actually enlist into the Public Health Service Corps, because they can become an officer through those programs, whereas in the military, you stay enlisted. There's a huge pay difference going that route as well. But I am so grateful for my experience in the military. I still lean on it for like some of the ethical value sets. And when I get into ethical dilemmas, and, like the core values of the Air Force was integrity first, service before self, excellence in all you do. And those are still like, those ethos still keep me going. And the things that I do every day, I rely on them and I believe in them, and they're etched in me. So those are things I still carry with me. Just that hard sense of work ethic, and really the service before self, it's not like that regular, like you have 8 patients and your day is over. Sometimes you have extra duties. Sometimes, you're doing your wartime job. You're dealing, maybe a group of airmen are going to deploy. You have to stay and get their exams done, so they're deployable. Like, you understand that it's bigger than you, and even I carry that into my practice too. I was just kind of having a conversation about that with my daughter, how from my patients, I got a bunch of Christmas gifts, and I wasn't really expecting that. It's just that I don't do it for rewards per se. It's my true passion And I just really enjoy improving their life and doing something bigger than myself, and putting that energy into the world, um, so I think it gave me that strong core value set, and the discipline and the push to do something, beyond yourself. So that's what I would say. That was important.
I
And I
mean,
think that's too, I think that's why burnout might occur too, because, like dentistry can become monotonous. But if you think along those lines, I think that it definitely is a driving force why you're there. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Because it's bigger than me. Yeah.
I love that that's like your takeaway, and that's the things that you learned. And I think that's the things that they were trying to instill in you. And I really do hope you give yourself credit though, because you were also open to that, right? Like you were someone who embraced that rather than fighting it. You were someone who put that into yourself and continued even outside of it. So it was a great experience, but hopefully you're giving yourself a pat on the back too, because this is awesome. I'm so happy to hear what I'm hearing from you today.
Thank you. I don't know what to say. Thank you.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm curious if you've worked alongside when you were a hygienist in the military with a civilian hygienist.
So not as in hygienist, but in Japan, they had several civilian hygienists, and the civilian hygienists were actually Japanese nationals. So they would work on base with us, and a few became like my really good friends. And I don't know if it's because they like stuff from America and I had access to it, but no. They're like, can you go to like our little grocery store is called the commissary, and they're like, can you get me some Captain Crunch? I'm like, sure, So they're like, that's my favorite. And obviously they don't have access to it, but yeah, no, they became like lifelong friends. And that was my only time working with a civilian hygienist in that capacity. So
Were you only stationed in one place abroad in Okinawa?
only one place abroad, Okinawa. Yes.
Interesting. Have you been back?
No, but I married my husband when I was in the military. His first duty station was Japan, and I was stationed in South Dakota. We got married while I was at South Dakota, so I got to go to Japan with him. So that's how that happened. But he always tells me if he did not marry me, he'd probably be lost in Japan somewhere. And so we really love the Japanese culture. You can see it all throughout our home. Our daughter, our third kid, her name is Ryan. It means lion in Japanese. I have an anime shirt on right now.
Looking at that earlier.
My daughter, you can see her mural in the back. And so like Japanese furniture. Oh, we're getting a cat. The name is Yuki, which means snow in Japanese. So yeah, we love Asian culture, and we hope to take our kids to Japan one day. So
that'd be great.
Do you have any final words or thoughts, advice for our student hygienists that might be listening to the podcast?
What I would say is to definitely follow your passion, because passion would take care of some of the money issues, some of the doubts and all those kind of things when you follow your passion. I just feel like that's a good route in general. It would lead you to your happiness eventually. And I would say not to get discouraged. I would say too, just understand your power as a hygienist. I mean, like the world is opening to us, and I think we're the key to a lot of oral health disparities. And have your seat at the table, be present, because you are our future, and we need you there, and we need you in those decision-making places for sure to elevate and move our profession forward. So you got it. So that's what I have.
Great. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing your experience with us. It was great.
No, thank you for having me. So excited that you guys asked me to be on.